Hi, I'm Ellen Kais. I'm the Executive Director here at the Gateway Arts Council, and this is another episode of ArtCast. We're joined today by Tilda Phlipot. Tilda's a very good friend of mine. She's the Executive Director of the Historical Science Society. And I'll tell you, I'm using a friendship here because she's very interesting. I think you're really going to enjoy it, so welcome, Tilda.
Thank you for inviting me.
I start all these, like I've had 4,000. I start these by asking people how they got involved in what they're doing. So how did you get involved with the Historical Society?
The Historical Society had just hired their first full-term director, Jim Sayer, and they were starting a building campaign. And I think as the pledges were coming in, the treasurer just felt a little overwhelmed with everything they were asking him to do, and he decided that he wanted just to be a board of trustee instead of being the treasurer, so they hired me as the bookkeeper.
So, I never knew that. How many years between the time that you were the bookkeeper till you became the executive director?
There's several steps in there, so I think it's like 5 or 6 years before I actually became full-time director.
And what was it like when you weren't the first director, correct?
No, I'm the second.
The second one. So what was it like when you were the director? Where were you located in the same building?
Well, when we first started, we were part of the senior center, just like Gateway. And I believe it's because Sherry Lodge was the director of Gateway at that time, and she also had sat on the board of the Shelby County Historical Society. So I believe the Historical Society asked Gateway for a favor, and they gave us a little desk outside in the opening of the senior center upstairs, and we were just right outside the Gateway's director's door.
I have this mind picture, kind of like a little Dickens desk. There's the Historical Society.
That's kind of where we were. We were tucked into a little corner, so we didn't take too much space. We had a desk and 2 file cabinets.
Well, it was nice they let you have 2 file cabinets.
I agree.
But there was, at the time, at that building, it's the Senior Center, the Arts Council, and the Historical Society.
Yes.
And they all resided in the one building.
Right.
And everybody shared everything.
We shared everything.
Which is kind of neat. Now, the Arts Council then moves to what is now the AAA building. I think that happened about 2005. When did the Historical Society move to its own building?
We moved out about May of 1999, maybe June. Okay. And I lived in the basement of the Ross Historical Center, which is really funny because my office was where they embalmed all the dead people. And so somebody walked downstairs actually while I was eating my lunch and said, "That's probably not safe." So COVID doesn't scare me very much.
No. So, I'm not sure how I would have felt about having my office down where they embalm people. That's a little woo.
It was a little weird at that time. The sink where all the embalming fluids had just been taken out, and so it was really eerie. And of course, then all the stories of the ghosts started.
Oh, that's. Now, I believe because this is an art cast, so I know you're going to wonder how we're going to get art out of this, but we are. The Arts Council and Historical Society have been partners on things for years.
We started partnering, actually our first partnership, we moved into our building and then we renovated it all. But back then the director was Patty Spielman.
Yeah,
and she sweet talked me into being part of their historical home tour that year. I thought we would have the house ready by that weekend and not have any problems. That's how naive I was about what a renovation of a 100-year-old building took. So on that weekend, we cleaned for a week and we asked all the workmen to go home, and we worked tirelessly to make it so we could be a part of that tour. And then on Monday morning, the workmen came back in, and within 30 seconds, the house was full of dust and dirt again, and it was totally destroyed.
Now, did they do 2 of those tours? Or is it just 1?
They had done one, I know, the year before.
Okay.
And then they did the one we were in, I believe, was the last year they did it.
I think that's right. I think from what I read, the Arts Council only did that 2 years.
And Sherry Lodge had been in charge of the first year, and then Patty took over and she was in charge of the second year.
But our biggest partnership, and one I think I get in on the last couple of years we did that over there, was our Spring Fling.
The Spring Fling was a very interesting partnership.
Yep, I believe, okay, according to my notes, the first Spring Fling, and I looked this up, was April the 8th, 2001.
It was after the Historical Society had opened. My greatest trial was to get people to come visit me. And Patty's greatest trial was to find a location to be able to start some yearly programming to get their name out. And Patty and I were best friends. And she called me and said, "Your building is the most beautiful building in town that would be open to something like an art show. Would you partner with me?" And I would never have left my partner down. She was my best friend. It's a perfect way to get people in the house and a perfect way to show it off.
And I think, oh, I know, that was for many, many years that it was over at your building. And I feel a little bad about this because that beautiful newly renovated building, there were 228 entries. So for anyone who doesn't know, that's 228 pieces of art that have to hang somewhere. And you didn't have a hanging system, so they were called nails. And we would go around putting nails and hang up all these pictures and take them down, and then all of those holes had to be filled back up and repainted. Isn't that how that kind of went?
That's exactly how it went. We had art from 6 inches from the ceiling and 6 inches from the floor. That's how much art actually would be in the building. And there would be holes all through the house. Probably the hardest sell I've ever had to my board was that I would fix those holes. And then we would go through and spackle the whole house and then repaint all of the interior of the wall to cover all those holes. So I used a very nice cream paint that covered very well.
It's true. I mean, I remember that. I mean, I think I was there, we had Spring Fling there maybe 2-3 years. And for those of you who don't know, the Arts Council used to have a office at AAA, which was very small, so we had really no space for an art gallery. And when we moved here to our current location, we have a whole house. So in order for us not to have to commute continually, we ended up bringing it here. But I think there were 2 or 3 I did down at the Historical Society. It was gorgeous. And Tilda's right, we had them from the ceiling to the floor. And there was always, if I remember, there was one upper room, and it was down in the most unlikely spot. And no matter what piece of art we put there, that won the category. And we used to joke about that. Because you never would have thought that that would be the spot where even a judge would see it. But it did.
You have to remember, reality was we had all volunteers hanging this art. And I would like to say we were all art enthusiasts and we knew everything about art. That is not the truth. So it always seemed like the most unlikely piece of art to win the award would be always 6 inches from the floor.
Yep.
So what I always said to artists was, it really didn't matter where your picture hung. Those judges could find it anywhere.
Right.
And they would just spend hours judging that art because it wasn't, our favorite friends didn't get a special spot. It was just really basically, how big is your painting? Where can we fit it in on the wall? And it was a jigsaw puzzle. And at the end, it was always like the last piece where we didn't know where it was going to go. That would be the winner.
Now, and plus you got to remember there's just a lot of art. I mean, there were 220 pieces the first year, and there were 70 pieces of student art. So that's a lot of art to hang in any building. And you know, it was just, we had it in there tight, but it was gorgeous. It always has been one of the most popular, you know, events. People love to come and see it. We used to do tours with the kids. We had docents, and maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
I worked a lot with retired school teachers, so that was one way we shared volunteers, because then my retired school teachers would learn a script. Ellen would go through, or whoever the director was at that time, and they would make a script on whether it was watercolor or oils or mixed media. I learned a lot about art in those years. And then they would pick out one or two paintings in that room and tell why they were some of the best works in that room. And usually they were the award winners. And showed the kids all different elements of art. So the whole series was just a wonderful way to learn about art if you had no knowledge of that. And I will tell you a cute story. So one year, a very young lady stopped at my door, and I wish I would have brought this piece of art today.
I was going to ask you about that.
And she brought it to my door and said, "My piece of art never gets picked for the spring fling. And I have painted this painting. And will you hang it on your wall?" And I went right in and I hung it on our wall. And as we are getting ready to renovate the annex, that painting just came off the wall in the annex so that they can do renovations. And it made me understand that those kids, it meant everything to have their artwork in Spring Fling. That meant you made it as an artist.
Right.
So that was the most touching piece of art, and it will be at the Historical Society to the day I no longer am there. And it will always hang on a wall somewhere because it reminds me of Spring Fling.
See, that is kind of the essence of why we do it. I remember one year we were still at your building. We were taking, I think they were third graders is what we took through.
Yes.
All the schools from all around the county were invited to bring their third graders. And we had docents and we had the scripts like she said. And we're coming down, there's a gorgeous stairway at the Historical Society. And we're coming down the stairway. And a little girl stops us and she said, and these are third graders, and she said, "I used to be good at art." And we stopped and we said, "Well, what do you mean you used to be good at art? Aren't you good anymore?" And she said, "Well, no." And I said, "Well, how do you know that?" She said, "Well, because so-and-so told me I wasn't." And I remember thinking, oh wow, you know, this is a third grader who's already got somebody has put a notion in her head that can't do art anymore. And that's one of the messages we really like to get out, is that, you know, art's inside of all of us. You know, some of us are making money off of it and some of us aren't, but there's always an element of art in you, and you should never look at what you do and say, well, this isn't any good. Because, you know, that's just not what this is about. And but that came from Spring Fling. I mean, that was a really neat time. And it still is. I mean, we still have it here. I miss that we, you know, sometimes I really miss that we don't do it over there. Maybe our 30th anniversary.
We can get a hanging system, because I don't think anybody's ever going to let me put that many nails in the walls ever again.
Now, see, we do have one here. That was when we came here. That was one of the first things, because we shared a board. Well, we rent from the church, and the church shared a board member with you.
Yes.
And when we came here, he was on the, because we rent from the church, he said to me something like, you have to have a hanging system or we're not letting you put up any art. I don't want the walls to look like the Historical Society. So we quickly learned how to do a hanging system, which it's been good for us because we haven't put up any holes in any walls, so that's a good thing. I want to kind of switch the conversation just a little bit and talk about, you have a new annex.
We do.
And I want you to, I think you're free to tell everybody what you're going to do. So I want to give you that time to talk about your new annex, what it's going to be. I'm kind of excited about it.
I'm really excited about it. I believe that the best way to teach children is in a hands-on experience. And so our new annex is going to be a learning center. And we're going to use elements so that kids can actually learn why education is so important. The men and women that worked at Monarch could get a job anywhere because they were mathematicians. And so I want kids to understand all it takes to run a lathe and to produce an element. So there will be some hands-on activities. It's going to be a STEM building. And we'll show how this all comes together, how art is a part of history, and history is definitely a part of art.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And so these partnerships are what makes our community the best place to live. And so without these partnerships, we would be not the strong.
Right. Well, it's when we work together. Obviously our organizations have to work independently, but it's when we get the opportunity to come together that it's even stronger. That because I'm like you, someone says STEM to me, and I acknowledge that science, technology, engineering, math are essential. They really are. But how much better would it be if it was STEAM? I'm not an eliminator of things. I think we have to combine. So history and art and science and technology and engineering and math all have to come together. It's much more holistic approach. And when we get to do something together, first of all, we laugh through a lot of it, just have an awful lot of fun, and it just builds the whole community a little more, And we did, I forgot, we did another partnership. We did it with our bad art.
We did do bad. I did do bad art, and she realized there are people in the world who have no artistic
Not true.
abilities.
This was wonderful.
But I think bad art gives you a great way to express all your belief systems and how they all tie together to make you the person you are and what is important to you. But the Arts Council and the Historical Society also worked on Apple Fest, and the Art and Gateway was in charge of the children's area for a while, and they were in charge of the music, and so we got to partner on that. We partnered on a lot of things throughout the years, and that's a great way to do it. And soon I hope we get a chance to work on some children's activities, because even when I'm doing my manufacturing day, or when I'm going out to the schools and I'm working on different things, knowing how to create a logo, knowing how to sell whatever you're selling, the artistic formats that have to go into making a flyer, all those things are part of art.
Right.
And our world doesn't work without art.
Well, thank you for saying that, because I'm a little biased, so yes, I do feel that way. I think you and I have talked about things, and I'm thinking of one in particular that we've talked about that I think could be really exciting. It's one of those impossible, maybe someday we could. We have a few of those that we might do. I'm also thinking about the Apple Fest. That was a pretty tight partnership between the Arts Council and the Historical Society. That was one that had, the first year when I came, the Arts Council was kind of rebuilding some things, so we did not participate in Apple Fest that year. And then I think it was only a couple years, and unfortunately we don't have that anymore. I hope someday we get something similar to that again. It was a neat experience with those kids. I mean, I think that's great. I think what you do with the kids, you always, when you go by the Historical Society, there's always a school bus there. There's always some class doing something at the Historical Society. How has the pandemic affected that? Are you able to, because it was such a important part of their education, how are you making up for that?
We're totally out of the schools right now, which are very, very sad for us, and the kids are not allowed to do any field trips. So I just actually packed up a whole packet of things and took to a new school teacher in the Hardin-Houston area, and tried to supplement as much as I have to help them teach about local history. So we continue to work with the teachers as much as we can, and we continue to supply materials. We are working on the same kind of thing you're working on now, with taking all of our living history videos and putting them into a format that we can put on YouTube, so that the teachers will be able to get veterans telling them what World War II was like, what it was like to be a POW in World War II, and they can just go out to our YouTube channel and then they can use those videos in their classroom. So we are working on trying to become in the technology world too.
Right, that's been, for those of us who are a little more hands-on, more, you know, we're used to kids being here or being with kids, and here's how the paint goes on and here's what you do. This has been an interesting time for us because we're not able to be physically present. And I don't think our organizations are alone. I think everybody's trying to figure out how do we take the limitations we have and still get what we believe to be important messages and important skill sets out to people. I mean, that's been, I mean, I think I've learned more about what buttons to push on a phone, what, you know,
I think the most fun we've had at the Historical Society with children was our Christmas of yesteryear. And we created 300 bags for the kids, and they contained all kinds of things that we normally did with the kids right there in the building, making gingerbread houses and things like that. And I believe every one of those 300 children thanked us, and their parents were just very, very pleased for us to create something that they could visit and actually come see Santa. So making those things happen in today's world is very, very hard, but they're so rewarding.
Well, we did, I know she was the instigator on this one. There's some thinking about this. We did trick or treat safely, which, you know, they were good. They had canceled it downtown, and I think you and I talked, and you said there's just no reason why we can't figure out how to do this. And you did it, I did it. I think the library ended up, and actually, spontaneously, there were some other places downtown that ended up doing it. But it took some work, but we did it. And I'll never forget. I think I'm with you. That's one of my favorite times because I've never seen such thankfulness on parents' faces, on kids' faces, because, you know, this is October and they had been not able to do anything since March. So, we had marks on the sidewalk. You have to stand 6 feet apart, and we had people making sure they were standing 6 feet apart, and we had it all figured out so nobody touched the candy. You just reached in the thing to get it, but it all worked. I mean, I'm really kind of proud of that one.
Yeah. I just think, COVID has made us work harder.
Yeah.
Think creatively.
Yeah.
And the way we've done things forever will never happen probably ever like that again. So when you've been doing a job for 20 years, sometimes that really presses you to be all you can be. But I think that we all want our community to be normal and to have some kind of things that we've had forever.
I agree with that. I think, and we say here the curtain will rise again, and it will. We will have shows again. We will do the things that we do. And we have some things that we're working on our schedule. What's kind of cooking on yours?
We actually have a fun book signing coming up
That's right.
with an artist that has drawn a barn in every one of the Ohio counties. It's kind of like things they did when Ohio was celebrating their bicentennial. And so we're going to do it at the Senior Center on April the 24th, which is a Saturday. You have to sit 6 feet apart from each other in every direction, which their floor is already marked because that's how they do exercise class.
Oh, wow.
So we're partnering with the Senior Center, and I think it's going to be lots of fun. And he is going to paint a painting. And if you buy a raffle ticket, you could take that painting home that very day. So it's a way to get a piece of art for $5.
Now, is there an entry fee or is it all free?
Everything is free to come watch him do it. If you buy his book, he will sign it that day. And if you buy a raffle ticket, you have a chance to win the artwork. But you will actually get to see this state-renowned artist paint, and he's struggling because how do you get out into the world to sell your book? And so this is, again, caused us to partner with other organizations and do things. And I'm hoping that in the spring that he'll come and do an art show for Ellen and do that. But we are working on that. So right now we're just trying to get done what we can get done.
Well, and we'll be happy to have him in the spring. What we've been doing here is that, I mean, our gallery is open, like your building's open, so people can come through and see what exhibits in the Historical Society.
Yes.
Obviously, you have to be careful how many people are in the building, and you have to wear a mask and social distance, but our gallery is open the same way. And so in the spring, we'd be happy to have him. I mean, because he's in kind of the same boat as some of our artists. It's more challenging for them to get their work out. So we've been doing virtual tours, which we would love to do with him. You know, anything we can do to help promote artists, Historical Society, just to get some things, going. So we've talked a little bit about what your plans are in the future and what you got going now. I really want to thank you for coming. And I want to make sure you have an opportunity to give your Facebook page, any of, your address, your phone number, your shoe size, whatever you want to know.
So, if you want to find out what's going on at the Ross Historical Center, just go on the Shelby County Historical Society's Facebook page. We post on that daily usually. We also have a website. It's the shelbycountyhistory.org, I think. And it's 1,000 pages of history. It's one of the best websites in the state of Ohio if you want to learn about your local history. And you're always welcome at the Ross Historical Center, or call us if you have a question, and we'd be glad to answer it. Our phone number is 937-498-1653, and we're located at 201 North Main Street.
Thank you for doing this. I'm sure I owe you a lunch or something.
Well, it's fun just to come and share our history.
It's just fun. Tilda and I are great friends, and I really appreciate that friendship, and I appreciate her coming today. We will see you next time. Thanks.